Now we are going to hear from Arizona State Representative Jennifer Longdon. Please direct your attention to the screens.
Hello, it's my honor to be here with you today. I'm Jennifer Longdon, the Assistant Democratic Leader in the Arizona House, and I've been invited to speak with you today about the intersection of reproductive rights and disability history. In order to do that, we need to go all the way back to 1924. And that year, 17-year-old Carrie Buck committed the unforgivable crime of being poor, pregnant, and uneducated. After being raped by her foster parents' nephew, she gave birth to her daughter Vivian. Her foster parents immediately had her committed to the Virginia State Colony for Epileptics and Feeble-Minded, the same place that incarcerated her mother Emma. To Carrie Buck's great misfortune, 1924 was the year that Virginia authorized the compulsory sterilization of the intellectually disabled. Carrie was about to become Virginia's test case. On May 2nd, 1927, in an 8-1 Supreme Court decision, the court held that Buck, her mother, and her 3-year-old daughter were promiscuous and feeble-minded, and that it served the people's best interest to have Carrie Buck sterilized. Affirming Virginia's sterilization procedures, esteemed jurist Oliver Wendell Holmes wrote that 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. Carrie's daughter Vivian made honor roll every year of grade school until her death from measles at age 9. And Carrie herself was later described as being a God-fearing woman of good temperament and average intelligence. Carrie's mother and her sister were also sterilized without their consent. Her sister Doris during her appendectomy in 1928. Doris tried for years to conceive and only learned of her sterilization in 1980. Virginia repealed their statute in 1974. However, Buck v. Bell remains the law of the land. It set the stage for more than 70,000 involuntary sterilizations in the United States, and it was cited during the Nuremberg trials in defense of Nazi sterilizations. Today, poor, generally BIPOC women are pressured into sterilization to receive entitled benefits, and let's never forget the unneeded and uninformed hysterectomies performed on immigrant detainees held in detention camps. Body autonomy for people with disabilities is debated to this day, often by those who purport to know what's in our best interest or the greater good of society. People with disabilities are still sterilized without their knowledge or consent. We are pushed into or barred from medical interventions based on our perceived value or concepts of our quality of life. We are infantized, marginalized, and ostracized in our everyday existence. As we work to support Planned Parenthood's mission to advocate for public policies that protect and expand reproductive rights and access to sexual health and reproductive health care services, including abortion, we must ensure that people with disabilities have full access to sexual education, reproductive justice, and body autonomy. So how do we do that? We begin by recognizing the value of people with disabilities and seeing us as sexual beings. Medically accurate sexual education is important to all young people, including those with disabilities. They should not be excluded from developmentally appropriate education on good touch, bad touch, consent, contraception, birth, and abortion as we would with their typically able peers. This may seem obvious, but I promise you, It's not. I was paralyzed 18 years ago. Recently, a doctor was reciting my medical history by way of introduction. Age, weight, T4 paraplegic, then not sexually active. I stopped him. Why would you say that? He kind of waved vaguely at my middle part. And I said, oh, not sexually active, because I'm paralyzed. Why would you think that? How can that clinician offer competent advice on my sexual health, from STDs to contraception, prenatal care, or in the case of a fetal disability, an accurate, unbiased assessment of potential outcomes, and offer quality advice should I consider abortion? We must insist that medical professionals provide accurate, unbiased information to people with disabilities. The fate of people like Carrie Buck was sealed by medical professionals backed by courts denying our humanity based on their perception of disability and quality of life. I hope we're wiser now. I fear we're not. Second, disability must become part of our diversity agenda. 1 in 3 people live with disability. That's 1 in 3 women, 1 in 3 African Americans, Latinos, LGBTQ+, incarcerated, undocumented veterans. Every identity group includes 1 in 3 people with a disability. As leaders in this moment, look to your own coalitions and boards and please ask yourself, where are the out and proud folks with disabilities? How are their voices being heard? Don't talk about us, talk to us. Better yet, move over and let us talk for ourselves. Now, last but certainly not least, we must work together to make sexual health, contraception, and abortion safe, affordable, and accessible to everyone, to everybody. In the case of people with disabilities, we begin by making sure our events have ASL interpreters, our videos, our captions, our GIFs and JPEGs have alt text so that they're screen reader friendly to include our deaf and blind community in communications and activities. We need to ensure that exam rooms have accessible scales, accessible communication, accessible exam tables, and we need to ensure that grab bars, doors, parking, bathrooms, booking and intake processes include rather than alienate. I've not had a pelvic exam in my 18 years of paralysis because of access barriers, and I'm not alone. The Americans with Disabilities Act is more than a building code. It's a declaration of civil rights. Stop skimping on it. To bring lasting meaning to the legacy of Carrie Buck, let's ensure reproductive justice and body autonomy for people with disabilities, free from bias and coercions that the stigma of disability carries. Let's move forward together to provide vital reproductive health care, sex education, and yes, safe access to abortion for all. Thank you.